Hey everybody, welcome to this episode, and this is the one where everybody's been waiting to see if the car would start. Obviously in the last episode, Paul and Ken and I went over where we were at regarding suspension, getting the motor in, double checking everything. We've done all that and the car is working. The motor's running, it's fantastic. We're happy to show you that we finally worked out some bugs, but before we do that, we wanted to just talk a little bit about what we ran into. Ken, why don't you start off with talking a little bit about when we tried to fire it. So we wanted to film the day of firing. We wanted to make sure that it actually worked before we showed what was up, but we tried to fire it and it didn't start, and there's a reason for it, and it's pretty funny, so I can maybe let Ken talk about it.
In the end, there's only two fuel connections for the system. There's a fuel pressure line from the gas tank, and then there's the vapor return line, just the equalization line. And because of the modular way these are made, and because the chassis is made to take multiple, we accidentally hooked up the lines backwards. And so we had fuel pressure to the vapor recovery system and no fuel in the fuel system.
Yeah.
And we fought with that for a considerable amount of time before I figured out that they were connected backwards.
Yeah, there's a Schrader valve actually underneath the plenum here where the fuel rail is, and we weren't getting any fuel. And because this is networked, we didn't know if it was something that was a module or something wasn't communicating properly. So we were doing all this testing from the ECM all the way back to the fuel pump and PEM and throughout the entire system and every connector.
So backwards, all the way from the whole thing. Okay, so is the ECU switching the pump on? Is the pump signal getting there? Power go to the pump?
Right.
Is the duty cycle signal going to the pump? And do we have, and eventually it just turned out that we just had the hoses connected.
Yep. So once we got fuel, we reset everything, and the car fired up, which is great. And then actually what we knew we were going to run into is that we knew that there was going to be things that we had to work through once we got the car running. And the car, once it started up, Paul and I and Ken have been working with basically a company that is very familiar with what we're doing, and we'll go into that later in a blog on who they are and what they've been working with us. But basically with our relationships, we were able to go through modules and sync everything, and Paul can touch base a little bit about that. Go for it, let them know where we're at, but what we were dealing with and now where we're currently sitting.
One of the hardest parts of this job is always going to be software. The modular nature in which these cars are designed. Everything on this car from the B-pillar forward is essentially the same as an S80, so everything hardware-wise was fairly easy to figure out, but the software was another matter. We keep calling these network cars because there is a full-fledged network in here. Cars don't just have a single engine computer anymore. There's a network of 20 different computer modules that all talk to each other. There's a computer for the engine, there's a computer for the transmission. The parking brake has a controller. We had to make all of the what we call serialized modules. That is, there are certain modules in the car that have to be paired with each other. They have to handshake in order to exchange lots of data back and forth.
They don't like each other, they refuse to work.
Exactly, and we saw that the first time we tried to fire the car up. The transmission controller wasn't paired with the CEM, the central electronic module, the distributor on the network, or with the ECU, so we got incompatibility messages from all the various different modules, and the engine wouldn't start for a while, and eventually we got, with our tuning partner, the immobilizer stuff figured out in the ECU. Then we had to duplicate our effort with the CEM, and then we had to figure out how to make the transmission controller talk to both.
Right.
And there's been a lot of trial and error. There's been a lot of loading different software onto those modules to both make them know that they're hooked up to a V8 instead of a 3.2 now, and also that the serial numbers all match each other, that they are allowed to communicate on the same network. But it's been a huge ordeal, and we're finally at a point where the car runs and drives.
Yeah, and Paul put that very eloquently, and it's nice that, you know, perfect example what we ran into is when we went to start it, we went from park to drive, and it had a real violent shift because the transmission control module wasn't correct for the other modules, or they weren't communicating properly on the network, and getting them to all do that on different or from different engine variations requires quite a bit of work. And that's what we talked about from day one, that we wanted something that was just like the OE. We weren't trying to make something or force something work and then just deal with some of the drivability issues that you might run into, like transmission or like stability control or ABS or something nagging at you all the time. We wanted to make sure that everything on this vehicle is communicating properly and works just like it would if this were done at the factory, right? So that's where we're at, and it works.
Some of this stuff is way more tedious than you think.
Right.
So this engine came from a 2000 model, or 2007 model.
Right.
Engine and transmission. The transmission controller module on the 2007 is different than all the other cars and is no longer available. So adapting the car to a later module and figuring out how to make that work in the network, these are just the struggles you don't anticipate when you start.
When we first plugged the powertrain into the rest of the car's electronics and scanned it, we weren't getting any response at all from the transmission controller that was on there. And after Ken and I did some research, he discovered that the part number on very early cars, regardless of engine, is different from the transmission controller part number on later cars.
Right.
But even the part number of the module itself being the same on all the TF80s, whether it's a 3.2 or a T6 or a V8, the software that's loaded onto them is different. So once we got a transmission controller that could talk to the rest of the car, we then had to make sure it was loaded with the right software to talk to the V8 ECU so that it can get information like, I'm producing this much power at this much RPM, so you want to shift at this shift point.
Right. And right now, I'm very happy. We've worked out all the bugs. We have alignment issues because we haven't gone to the alignment shop. This car's got a lot of work that still needs to be done. We've got our lift installed. We're doing wheels and tires. But because we transfer over steering racks and we upgraded tie rod ends and control arms and everything like that, we have an alignment to get done and just some, now it's just fine tuning. But right now, the network is happy and the car's driving, it's running, it's doing everything that it should. It's got all the codes associated with it. Like if anything happens, it's gonna trigger and let us know. We can plug into it and read pending codes. We can update software. We can do everything because it works like it should. And
with all the right modules in the car, it doesn't think it's an S80 and a V70's body. It thinks it's a V70. And that means, critically, the power lift gate works.
yeah, and that's the thing, is that we're not having to bypass anything. The keys, everything that's on this car that came with the XC70 is working. Our keys are working. Starter control module, everything that was for this car there. We didn't have to reprogram any of the accessories or the keys or anything, you know, that's separate from the V8 modules. It's all working and doing what it should, just like a factory car. So we're really excited. So now, just to show everybody, I think let's hit the button and let them see that it starts up. There we go. So right now we do have this hooked up to the 3.2 exhaust, the factory exhaust that was on here. We have a custom header that we made through Adam Design, but it's bolted up the mid pipe and back is to a 3.2. We will be updating the exhaust and doing a custom exhaust on this car, but right now it's pretty quiet, but it's nice to hear that V8 sound, so pretty cool. So as you can see, the only thing we have on right now is a TPMS sensor. Obviously the factory wheels and tires have been sitting. We'll fix that later, but shows the doors open. We got to fill the washer fluid. And shows that the tire pressure is low and that the engine hood is open. So everything in the network is working as it should. Hey guys, just wanted to show you a custom piece that we had to have made for this project on the V8. This was done by Adam Nonis from Adam Design. We utilize Adam for a lot of custom parts and things that we've done in the past on project cars, but we needed a head pipe or a mid pipe here that bolts up to the manifold on the V8. And the factory one is really expensive, hard to find. You can't get them used because they come with post cats. They're not, they don't have oxygen sensors on them. They're just after the entire system there that is being monitored. The car still has catalytic converters on it and it does have oxygen sensors, but this being an off-road vehicle, we went ahead and bypassed the post cats that are on that factory unit that usually runs about 1,800 bucks. But Adam was able to cut the flanges, design the flanges for us. These bolt up to the factory manifold. They are specific to the V8. We put some flex joints in there and some V-bands to give us a little bit of room to make sure that it will fit with a really nice flange that will bolt up to the exhaust system. So yeah, Adam Design up in the Seattle area. Adam Nonis, thank you very much for this. That is fantastic. We'll be installing that on the car soon, and then we will be making an exhaust system for the rest of it. Right now it's just going to bolt up so we could get the car started. As you can see, it will bolt up here, and then that piece will go in between that and the rest of the exhaust system. Eventually we're going to go ahead and do a different exhaust system on this car, but right now we're just trying to get it up and running. So we needed that pipe, and Adam knocked it out. We sent him a pipe out of the S80, the factory pipe, so he could create a fixture to make that. And we went ahead and put the factory pipe back on the S80 so we don't need it. And here we are. All right, the front suspension is in. We went with Bilstein HDs, new springs. We got our 30 mil upper spring spacer that goes up above the assembly there to give it a little bit of a lift. We replaced basically this whole front suspension with Bilsteins. It's a little bit of a custom work here. They don't really list the applications for it, but we'll update you guys on what we did in the blog to make everything work. Yeah, we did Bilstein HDs on the front. They're in. Suspension is in. And then we also installed the Bilstein HDs on the back with the spring spacer you can see here, 30 mil, give a little bit more height. We're also doing overload coils and bump stops. We're waiting for the bump stops right now, but we do have the coil in and the Bilstein in the rear shock, so it's all good. Suspension is coming along nicely. So basically, I just want to give a big shout out to to Adam at Adam Design. You know, we're not done by any means. We still have a lot to do and a lot more to go. Adam at Adam Designs, we'll be talking about more in our blog. Paul's been working on a little bit of a write-up on kind of where we're at. We'll all get all of our information that we've all kind of gathered and put this into a blog as we keep moving forward. But this is not done by any means. This car's got a long way to go and a lot of stuff that we're going to be doing to it, and it'll be a lot of fun. Like I said, it's a cool project. But I want to thank Paul for all of his time and effort, you know, and research that he's done and working with our tuning partners. Also Ken with all of his time and troubleshooting and research. It was a fun project so far, and we're still going, but it's just really cool that, you know, we got to do something a little bit different here at IPD, which we haven't been able to do in quite some time because we all get caught up on our regular jobs and doing things. But this was fun to be able to knock this out in the afternoons and come out here together and spend time and learn a lot more about these things. I learned way more about the network on the P3 chassis than what I wanted to, as far as the color of certain wires that go from the ECU down to the PIM and the pump and things like that. It's like, we know too much stuff about it now, but it's been a lot of fun. So I appreciate everybody tuning in and supporting us. We've been getting a lot of great comments. So anything else you guys want to say? What do you think? It's cool to see it working, right?
It is very cool to see it working.
Yes. All right, cool. Well, stay tuned, and we'll keep adding more episodes as we keep doing things along this project. So we just appreciate everybody's support and subscribing to the channel. Yeah, so obviously the alignment's off, but right now the only thing we've got is just a TPMS, which will be fixed here pretty soon. But it's driving. Very smooth. Works as it should. It shifts. There's no hiccups. Suspension feels great. It should. We replaced everything with Bilstein HDs and overload springs and our lift kit. But yeah. Yeah, so once we get the alignment done, we can outfit this thing with our wheels and tires, the wheel and tire package. We're doing a wrap on the car. Obviously this car is going to be an overland theme. We will be working on exhaust. We got to get an exhaust system on this thing that's going to suit the V8. But then other than that, yeah, we'll have lots of information going to the blog and updating everybody on the build. We're also going to be fixing just a few small cosmetic things around the vehicle just to make it appropriate for our build. So we're really excited. But the good news is that everything is working as it should on the vehicle right now. So the network and all the modules are happy and we don't have any issues. So now we can move forward knowing that our partners here in the tuning segment helped us get through all of that. So I couldn't be more excited for where we're at. Probably the next thing to do is put wiper blades back on this thing, or wiper arms, so I can have wipers. Probably not the best thing to be out here driving around in the rain without any wiper blades, but we can see okay. It's not raining that bad. But yeah, just buttoning everything up. It's just all small thing, putting everything back together under the hood, making it look pretty, and then just going from there. But right now, I think that we've overcome the biggest hurdles, and my team and I are really happy with where we're currently at with this. So it's a lot of fun, and like I said, we just wanted to keep it as OE as possible, and I just don't think it could get any better than where we're at right now. So I'm thrilled that it worked out, and the V8 is operating the way that it should inside this XC70.